Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started with today's presentation. I want to thank you all for coming. Just to let you all know, too, we are going to have this same information. Kieran is in the back here. He's going to be recording the presentation and putting it up on our project website. And then all the activities that you guys are going to participate in today will be available online for participation by additional individuals. So if you have neighbors, family, friends also that aren't able to participate tonight, please share that information. We'll also be sending out another update, but this information is available to individuals this week for their participation. Sorry, it's hard to breathe sometimes. So I want to again thank you all for coming. My name is Jennifer Gates. I am the planning manager for policy and housing here at the city of Encinitas. And we're really excited to get this project underway. We completed the active transportation plan in 2018 and recently received the Caltrans Sustainable Communities Grant to implement this project. And I think that's actually some of the slides that you'll hear about today. But with that, just a little housekeeping. You know where your emergency exits are. There are bathrooms in the back or in the hallway. There's candy and there are drinks. Just keep your mask up and down. We request that and I appreciate that. And if you have any other questions, please let us know. There are staff that we're going to go around and introduce right now that you can ask your questions to. And then we'll go ahead and have Evan kick off here in a minute. But I'm going to have him introduce himself.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Evan Jednak, project planner with the city of Encinitas.
Hello, I'm Sherry Bryan with Chen Ryan Associates, and we are the consultant team working on this project. I'm the consultant team project manager, and great to see all of you here. And maybe I'll just do a shout out to some of the other Chen Ryan staff. We have Jenny on. What community are you with?
I'm with Lucadia.
Lucadia. And we have Katya.
I'm facilitating Old Encinitas.
And let's see, Christian.
I'm doing Levenhain.
Okay, and Eric.
And I'm doing Cardiff by the Sea.
Good, so we've brought our transportation planners, traffic engineers here with us this evening. They'll be helping to facilitate.
All right, and from the city, we have Abe, our traffic engineer that many of you already know. And some of you probably know Matthew, he's back there as well, also with the CIP, and then Julie as well with CIP here at the city. And Roy will be here shortly. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and let Evan kick off tonight.
Okay, so welcome everybody. This is the first time we've done outreach like this in person since the pandemic, so we're really excited to be here and we're glad that you guys could all join us. So here's a breakdown of tonight's agenda. We've done introductions, we're going to cover the project scope and schedule, we'll review the existing bike and pedestrian network, we have results of a recent citywide survey that was sent out, then we'll go into breakout stations by the neighborhood you live in, we'll report back by neighborhood, and we'll wrap up with a Q&A session. So the city's active transportation plan, or the ATP, was adopted in 2018 and it established a network of biking and walking facilities throughout the city. An implementation plan was not part of the original ATP due to funding limitations. So what this project, the MAP is, Modal Alternatives Plan, it's an implementation plan for the ATP, and as Jennifer mentioned, it's funded through the Caltrans Sustainable Communities Grant. So in preparation for this workshop, the project team has been working to identify which of the ATP projects are still unbuilt. There have been several that were built since 2018, but many have not been built. So the goal of this workshop and the project in general is to prioritize the remaining unbuilt ATP projects. The end result will be that the top 5 projects in each neighborhood and the top 10 citywide projects, for a total of 35 projects, will be prioritized for construction. And this will involve developing conceptual plans and fact sheets for the top projects and identifying funding opportunities. So here's a bit of a project schedule. In summer 2021, many of you may know there was a citywide mobility survey It's been conducted. The results will be discussed later tonight in detail. Right now, fall 2021, public workshop. This is where we are currently. This winter, there will be another public workshop like tonight's event. And by summer 2022, we will have a draft implementation plan. And by the fall of 22, we hope to wrap up the project with a final implementation plan. And with that, I'm going to pass it on to Sherry for a review of the 2018 ATP.
Thank you so much. Does anyone have any questions about the scope that Evan went over? Is that more or less clear? That there's an adopted plan in place, and the purpose of this project is to prioritize those unbuilt segments and then develop an implementation strategy. So we're really asking you, the essence of what we're asking you tonight is what's the most important to build first? When we look at the planned bike and pedestrian network, what's most important to build first? So that's what we're trying to get at. Yeah?
So are all of those things funded now? Like, did they get the funding for all 35 things?
No, we wouldn't have the funding now, but as the city obtains funding, you want the most important projects at the top of the list for funding to be funded first. So no, the funding would not be there in place, but as the city obtains funding, you want the most important projects to be built first. And that's really what we're trying to get at through this project and here tonight with you. We want to know what you think about what's most important to get built first. Yeah?
Is your final implementation plan like a specific plan or a plan that's adopted by the city and endorsed by city council? Is it like a master plan that moves forward in the future?
It will be adopted by a resolution. I don't know if any of you participated in Cross Connect. So it's the same idea. So at the end, we'll have a plan in the sense of it'll have, these are the prioritized projects, these are the potential funding mechanisms for those. And then also with that, there will be adopted by resolution, and that'll kind of help set that CIP project list into the future.
Great questions. Any other questions before we go on? All right, so so our starting point really was the 2018 ATP. So we started with this plan that was adopted a few years ago, and the first thing we had to understand is, since then, what has been built? Because we don't need to include that in the list that gets prioritized. We have to understand first what gets built. So we kind of started with the ATP, what was proposed in the ATP, and you can see a copy of that plan document behind me on the entrance table if you'd like to actually look at that plan document. There were about 86 miles of bike facility proposed, about 25 miles of sidewalk, and about 29 spot pedestrian improvements, like curb extensions, etc. So kind of very focused spot improvements. So that's what was presented in the 2018 plan. We had to review that and kind of go through a bit of work. We used recent aerial photography. We used city staff's extensive knowledge of construction projects in the city, and we figured out, of all those miles of proposed projects in the 2018 plan, what has been built. And through that effort, what we found out is that about 21 miles of the proposed network had been built, about 6.7 miles of sidewalk had been built, and just 3 of the 29 spot improvements had been built. And so that helped us really identify and understand what we need to focus on in this project, what we need to prioritize in this project. And the next set of slides then just shows you some of these networks. And some of these networks you have on plots on the tables that you're sitting at. But we identified that about 21 miles of bike facility had been built, and that in fact currently we have about 31.6 miles of existing facility. So that number got adjusted a little bit from the 2018 plan. So this map is showing existing bike facility, and there's about currently there's about 31.6 miles of existing facility. And you'll see some different classification types. The proposed network consists of Class 1 bike path, Class 2 bike lane, Class 3 bike route, a Class 2 buffered bike lane, a bike boulevard, which is also a type of Class 3 bike route, and then a Class 4 cycle track. If you need any kind of refresher on what those facility types are, we have 2 posters fixed to the wall, and you can go kind of look at what those facilities are. But the proposed network and the existing network consists of those facility types. You can see by the symbology, what's where. That light blue is bike lane, for example. The red is Class 1 bike path. So you can kind of see the network there as it exists currently. Then we identified through this effort what remains to be built, and that's about 66.2 miles of bike facility. And you'll also see that in the plots on your table, and they're reflected by a dashed line. So the proposed unbuilt facility is reflected by a dashed line. It's actually quite hard to see that in the projection here, but I hope if you look on the plots, on the tables, you'll be able to see the dashed lines. Those are the proposed segments of the bike network. Those are the segments that we're trying to hear from you. What is most important to build? Of all these dashed lines that reflect planned bike network, what do you think is the most important to build? And then we also want to know a little bit about why. Is it because it gets you someplace important? Is it because you're afraid of that particular intersection and you want improvements there? Is it because your kids like going there? So we'd like to know what's most important and why. And that will really help us feed into the capital improvement project list in a way that's meaningful for the entire community, and that's really what we're trying to do. This map summarizes for the pedestrian facilities what we're looking at. There's about 197 miles of existing pedestrian facilities, and that includes sidewalks and trails. And in terms of sidewalks, we only have about 18.5 miles that are still unbuilt and proposed in the 2018 plan. So we have about 18 miles of sidewalks that still need to be built, and those plots are on your table as well. And those unbuilt planned sidewalk connections are reflected by a black dashed line in the plot. So we want to know, of all these planned sidewalks, what's most important and why. So that sets the framework for what we're going to be doing here this evening. And we also thought that you would be interested in seeing and learning about some of the results from the citywide survey. We asked, how many people here took that survey? Oh, excellent, very good participation. So, in total, about 1,273 people took the survey across the city. So it was fairly well responded to survey, and we're happy about that. And we've pulled out some responses to share with you tonight to help you understand. If we look at all community members, or all of these respondents, these 1,270 people who responded to our survey, what did they think is most important? What factors do they think should be used to prioritize these unbuilt projects? So that also will help us set the stage for the exercise that you're going to do. What did everyone who responded to this survey think about what's most important? So we sent out over 30,000 postcards, basically every resident and business across the city. We distributed a postcard at the Mobility Element Workshop. This project is not the Mobility Element also, just for any of you who thought that it's related, but it's a different project. We had, as I mentioned, 1,273 respondents, so that's a large response. We sent out a lot of postcards, but that's still a very large response. Large sample size, and we think that the results of that survey impart some confidence in interpreting interpreting what's important and really using those to inform this process. So what did we ask? You all know, since you all responded, we asked about general community values. We asked specifically about prioritizing infrastructure funding, so what are funding priorities? We asked about what's important when we implement bike and ped projects. We asked you about how you primarily get around the city of Encinitas also. So we have interesting mode share data, trip purpose, and then we asked people, what can we do to get more people walking and cycling? So we want to share some of these responses with you, especially those that kind of inform the work that we're doing here. This is interesting, an interesting preliminary result that shows, and I apologize, I hope you can see, it's showing the mode share. So there was a question, if you remember on the survey, what is your primary method of getting around Encinitas to the places you go most often? And so it's not surprising that about 60% of the respondents said driving, we drive. Followed by carpooling, about 15%, cycling, 11%, walking, jogging, almost 10%, et cetera, et cetera. So of all the 1,200 respondents to the survey, this is the mode share percentages that were reported out. We also looked at how people travel by neighborhood, and these are very interesting results. I wish I knew how to point, but I won't.
It doesn't work on TVs.
Oh, okay. So we're looking here at mode share by neighborhood. And the green means the highest rate of all the 5 neighborhoods, and the red means the lowest rate of all 5 neighborhoods. So what we're seeing here is that Olivenhain has the highest rate of driving alone. So we disaggregated the results by neighborhood, and we're seeing that Olivenhain by far has the highest rate of driving alone. Old Encinitas has the lowest rate of driving alone. Similarly, New Encinitas has the highest rate of carpooling with that 22%. Cardiff had the lowest rate. Old Encinitas had the highest rate of walking and cycling. Where's Old Encinitas? I think you're right here.
Yeah,
These two
that's right
tables.
there.
Yeah, at 16%, 16% said that the main way I get around Encinitas is by bike. So that's a pretty high mode share for bike. 20% said that the primary way I get around is walking. Yeah.
I'm just wondering how you ask about the biking, because, for instance, when I did the survey, I was thinking of me, and I work from home and maybe drive, but my 16-year-old is out way more than I am on his e-bike, but I probably didn't think of him, so I probably was just answering for me. I'm wondering, did this go out to, there's so many 12 to 16-year-olds now e-biking, is that captured in this?
That's a great question, and I would probably answer no, because we
I
set
think
one
there's a lot more
post.
biking than we're
Yeah.
realizing, in other words.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So we solicited one response per household,
Yeah.
so we were hoping that one person in that household would respond. So it wasn't like the census that asks for every person in the household what
Yeah, and
some
if it was
questions.
all adults answering, we're answering different than probably
The kids,
teens.
you're right, that's a good one. That's a good one. So, and then getting back to the mode share by neighborhood, then we see Olivenhain also has the lowest rate of walking, cycling as the mode they most often use to get around Encinitas. So these are interesting results. And we looked at really all of the results disaggregated by the primary mode of travel, because we wanted to understand, are cyclists overwhelmingly responding to the survey, and are they kind of biasing the results in any way? So we wanted to know, what do drivers think, what do cyclists think, what do pedestrians think, and we think this is a more balanced approach to interpreting the results. So there's a next set of slides where on the left we show the ranking of a particular question or response to a particular question. We show the ranking for the overall population, so those 1,200 people that responded, and then we disaggregate the results in the columns on the right by primary travel type or mode. So we asked people about 12 different community values. Maybe you remember these. And overall, people thought that ensuring safety, designing neighborhoods for walking, cycling, and safeguarding clean air were the top three most important community values. And that was true for the whole sample of respondents from the survey, and also for the carpoolers and for the pedestrians. The carpoolers and pedestrians, if you can see the results, picked the top three, the same top three as the overall sample. The drive-alongs varied a little bit compared to the overall sample. They didn't include designing neighborhoods for walking, cycling, but they did include promoting healthy lifestyles. So you can see with the 1, 2, 3, how each of those segments of travelers responded. It's kind of consistent. The cyclists are the most different. They put investing in active non-motorized transportation as their second most important community value. So that makes sense. It's almost kind of confirming or validating some of the results. We also asked about funding priorities. So we see the top three fairly consistently, except for with cyclists, are repairing potholes and maintaining streets, maintaining pedestrian sidewalks and walkways, and reducing traffic congestion or delays. So those are the top three for both drivers, carpoolers. Cyclists felt differently. They want roads safer for bikes and peds. They want increased designated striped bike lanes, and they want more shared walkways and bikeways. So they felt a little differently about funding priorities. We asked specifically about prioritization criteria, and this is really what we're going to focus on tonight, is how do we prioritize, what's most important. And there was incredible consistency across the whole group of survey respondents. Every single mode selected the same top three prioritization criteria. They're out of a set of 7 possible prioritization criteria. And that was gap closure, proximity to schools, jobs and attractions, and anticipated demand. So everyone felt that those were probably the 3, out of these 7 criteria, those were the most important for us to consider. And we want to hear about that from you. So we had 7 prioritization criteria. You could have, anything driving your choice of what's most important. So you don't have to be limited to these 7. You can make it very personal. What would help you ride your bike more frequently? What would help you get out and walk more frequently? So we want to hear about that and kind of substantiate what we heard, see if there's anything we're missing, and really hear from this group. And that's what we're going to do right now. So you are in stations by neighborhood, and it's kind of nice. We have a good distribution. Is this neighborhood is missing people, right? Okay, I think that's okay. So we have
It's
two
sort of
sets.
reflective of the survey.
We have 2 sets of plots. We have citywide plots. So we want to hear from you about what's most important across the entire city. Give us your most important projects and why are they important for cycling and for walking. And then we want you to focus in on your neighborhood and say what's most important in your neighborhood and why in terms of cycling and walking improvements. That's really what we're going to spend the next 30 minutes doing. We have these 3 focus questions. What are the most important citywide projects? Why? What are the most important projects in your neighborhood? And then if these projects were built, would you ride your bike more frequently? Would you walk more frequently? And then after we focus on this for 20 minutes or 30 minutes, or how much time do we have? It's only 6:30. Yeah, so we could come back around 7 and hear what you all have to say about the prioritization and importance of projects. So I will let each of the facilitators kind of take over in their own group, and we can visit back around 7 o'clock.